Assalamu alaikum guys, this is me Senpai Gamersan. I'm your host Senpai. We are playing the game 57 North. Now I just give the 5 star to this game. It's because the game creation is fascinating, it's awesome, it's amazing. I don't know about the cube which you can buy at $1,200 or $12. I don't know. I never try it. So yeah, that's all I just wanted to say. Anyway, today we're gonna be trying to get the different ending, and I'm gonna be try to get the new consequences of this story, like what gonna be happen if we do this, what's gonna be happen if we do that. Yeah, if you guys love this gameplay, let me know in the comments down below, and if you guys wanted to play more, let me know in the comments down below too. You guys can check it out, the Shadow of the North gameplay. Not north, note, yeah, I mean naughty, not. The reason the name is Shadow of the North, it's because you are totally naughty. If you're trying to be naughty, your friend's gonna be die. If you're trying to be naughty, your loved one's gonna leave you. Yeah, this is why they call this Shadow of the North. Naughty, not whatever it is. Anyway, we are playing 57 North, so we have to concentrate on that game, not in the Shadow of the North. Anyway, why it's okay. Start the game. Here we go. Chapter 1.
Rock! Sasha yelled from the front of the small boat. From the tiller, Caleb squinted against the stinging rain as he tried to decipher the abstract shapes floating past them in the darkness. A sudden flash of lightning revealed a huge stone column jutting out of the rough sea directly ahead.
Stop the boat.
Caleb cut the engine and the boat lurched to a stop as a huge wave crashed against the column, spraying them with foam. Caleb reached for the throttle, but Sasha stopped him. "Listen," she said. It took a moment for Caleb to realize what she was hearing. The distinct sound of waves crashing against rocks. It was coming from all around them.
Get your bearings. Get out there.
Caleb eased the boat forward, trying to keep it in place as he assessed the situation. Alaska's inside passage was a labyrinth of islands, and he honestly had no idea where they were. A quick decision could make the situation even worse. His efforts were interrupted by a soft thud as the boat struck a boulder beneath the waterline, and the motors screamed in protest as the propeller lodged against it.
Back up. Cut the engine.
Caleb cut the engine, plunging them back into eerie silence. The boat bobbed awkwardly as the stern remained hung up on the rocks. Caleb tried to find out what they were caught on, but couldn't see anything in the swirling black water. A large swell washed under them, lifting the boat as it passed. It wasn't enough to dislodge them, but the boat came down hard with a hollow crunch that surely cracked the fiberglass hull. Another flash of lightning revealed an approaching wave at least twice as large and cresting just off their bow.
Ride it out. Push off.
Caleb stuck his foot in the water and pushed off the rock. The boat broke free, but so did Caleb. As he slipped, the waves slammed into him, sending him tumbling across the back of the boat and over the railing. Any pain that Caleb felt paled in comparison to the sudden immersion in icy water. By Alaskan standards, 57 degrees was actually quite warm, but still enough to send an unaccustomed body into shock. Caleb's head rang as he came up, gasping for air. He had just enough mental faculty left to see that the wave had carried him 20 yards from the boat, which was now bobbing freely but half submerged. The rocky shore was at least 5 times further, but it was in the direction of the current.
Swim to shore.
Caleb forced his trembling limbs in the direction of the shore, but as he got close, he could tell that the waves crashing against the rocks were much larger and more violent than he had thought. He felt himself dropping down and touched bottom, but the bigger the trough, the bigger the swell. He turned just in time to see the wave come down on top of him, slamming him underwater, and everything went black.
Oh crap.
Back in the boat, Sasha managed to regain her balance on the slippery deck, which was now half submerged as the boat sank. She tied off a line and threw it in Caleb's direction, but it wasn't nearly long enough, and Sasha could see that Caleb wasn't moving.
Save the Caleb. Let's save the boat first.
For a moment, Sasha considered going after Caleb, but she knew that if she left the boat, they'd probably both drown. She tried to push the thought aside and turn her attention to her own problems.
Grab the anchor.
She pulled the anchor from beneath the seat. It was surprisingly light, perfect for what she had in mind. As the boat drifted past a craggy rock outcropping, she wound up and threw it as hard as she could. The anchor sailed over the target, but the rope fell into a vertical crack in the rock. The boat spun around as the anchor set like a grappling hook. She couldn't reel in the boat through strength alone, but every time it fell into a trough, the line slackened enough for her to wrap it around two cleats in the front. It was an exhausting process, but after 5 minutes of labor, the boat was close enough to the rock that the rope was pulling upwards, keeping it from sinking any further.
Look for Caleb.
Sasha scanned the waves for any sign of Caleb. After a few minutes of fruitless searching, exhaustion finally took hold, and she collapsed into the boat. She had no idea where she was or if Caleb was even alive, but there was nothing she could do about it now. Sasha pulled her jacket over her head and allowed her mind to drift into a restless sleep.
Shit. I'm alone.
Sasha's eyes opened reluctantly. The storm had passed, and it was just bright enough to see her surroundings in the early morning mist. Probably 3 a.m., she guessed. In August, the Alaskan sun had the annoying habit of setting so late and rising so early that there were only a couple of hours of true darkness. She and Caleb had been on the family vacation long enough that the novelty had worn off. "Caleb," she said aloud, as the previous night's events came flooding back to her. The sinking feeling in Sasha's gut only got worse the longer she searched, but the low-hanging fog made it difficult to see anything. She caught a brief glimpse of sand a ways up the shore. The boat was still half submerged, but seemed like it could at least ride the waves in. She found a paddle and untied the crude knot which was holding her to the rock. The boat sank quickly, but by the time it was completely submerged, the water was only waist deep, and she was able to drag it up onto the narrow stretch of sand. She found Caleb lying prone near the rocks. Somehow he was still alive, but cold to the touch and shaking uncontrollably. Sasha ran to the boat and pulled their phones out of a waterproof compartment. Both of them still worked.
God
Couldn't
damn
find a
it.
signal. Caleb's dad, Sasha's uncle, would be out looking for them, but that could take days with so many islands to search. Sasha gathered some fallen branches from the tree line. They were soaking wet, but some gasoline from the boat helped get them burning. The smoke was thick, which Sasha hoped might attract anyone out looking for them. After 30 minutes by the fire, Sasha was warm and dry, but Caleb's skin was pale and he still shivered uncontrollably. "Hypothermia," observed Sasha. "We need to get you moving."
Inspect the boat.
Sasha had dragged the boat far enough up the sand to see that the motor was flooded with water after being submerged overnight. But the real problem was the hull. It had several cracks in the fiberglass where the boat had hit the rocks. It wasn't going anywhere without a lot of work. The beach was flanked by steep cliffs, so they made their way up to the tree line, which rose more gradually in each direction.
Huh.
"What's that?" asked Caleb, pointing at one of the pines. Halfway up the trunk, a small security camera was attached to what looked like a tiny satellite dish. Even though it was a sign of civilization, something about the sudden feeling of being watched gave Sasha the creeps.
Explore the west.
They followed the tree line as it rose to the top of the steep cliff. From higher up, they could see the shoreline arc around the base of a small mountain just tall enough to be covered with a dusting of snow. Other than a few distant islands and a coastline at least 20 miles away, it was ocean as far as the eye could see.
Where are we?
"Where are we?" Sasha asked. Caleb shrugged, not wanting to admit that he had been lost even before the storm hit. The two cousins had taken the boat out the previous afternoon in an attempt to stave off the boredom of the family trip. Neither of them had realized how disorienting the chain of islands could be, and the squall come out of nowhere. "The storm must have pushed us to one of the outer islands," Caleb offered, trying to convince himself of his own innocence.
Check the phone.
Sasha pulled out her phone. Even without a signal, the GPS worked, but the map required a connection to download details. The blue dot just showed that they were in the middle of the ocean off the southeast coast of Alaska. Not even the large populated islands appeared on the default map.
Explore inland.
Maybe we can get a signal up the mountain, Sasha urged. But Caleb eyed the peak skeptically. It was a couple of miles through dense forest, and he didn't look like he was in any shape for a trek. Just wait here, Sasha said, ducking under a branch. She had never hiked without a trail before, and it wasn't long before the thick underbrush forced her to turn around. As soon as she did, the sight of another security camera made her jump. She caught her breath and hurried back to Caleb.
Tell Caleb.
It was too dense, Sasha said, but I found another camera. Hopefully someone is watching, Caleb mulled. Sasha nodded, but was unable to shake the creepy feeling the cameras gave her. Why was someone in the middle of nowhere so concerned about security? Caleb must have picked up on her unease. It's probably just for wildlife, he said. This is all national park. Sasha hoped he was right. They were able to follow the edge of the cliff a good ways further before it abruptly fell off into a ravine. The path forward looked treacherous, but a metallic glint caught Sasha's eye. She pushed aside some underbrush to reveal a large outdoor electrical box secured with a padlock. Caleb picked up a rock and tested its weight in his hand. Are you sure that's a good idea? Sasha asked.
Break the padlock.
Caleb brought the rock down hard and the padlock snapped open. Some of it looked like standard networking gear, but several pieces were custom black boxes with no manufacturer and cryptic homemade labels like SE_1421. That's some serious gear for watching wildlife, Sasha mused. Caleb closed the door and hung the broken lock back in place, but the large gash on the metal case was impossible to hide.
Break back to beach.
By the time they got back to the beach, Caleb was stumbling and the fire had almost died out. Sasha tossed a few more branches on to get it going again. She had hoped that the smoke would attract help, but if they were on the outside of the passage, it would be the last place a search party would look. In the state Caleb was in, they couldn't wait that long.
Keep exploring.
They followed the coast in the other direction for about a quarter mile when Caleb's phone dinged. One new network found. Station 57 had no password and no internet access, but it was close enough for them to pick up the Wi-Fi signal. Go that way and call out the signal strength, Caleb told her. We can triangulate the position.
Triangulate.
Sasha pulled up her Wi-Fi settings and watched as she walked back along the tree line. 15%. 12, she called out. Walk 50 paces straight in and yell out again, Caleb shouted back. Sasha fought her way through the dense brush. 27%, she shouted. A brief moment of panic hit when she didn't hear a response. Caleb? Follow my voice, he finally shouted back. A few minutes later, Sasha found him standing at the edge of a clearing with a small cluster of buildings at the center.
Search the building.
Hello? Caleb called out as they searched the buildings. There were no signs of life, but what sounded like a distant voice was just audible over the sound of the wind. As they approached the largest building, they could finally make out what the voice was saying. Sasha, Caleb. They both froze in their tracks.
Oh crap.
Who's there? Sasha shouted. My name is Wilson, the voice called back, but no one appeared. There was something odd about his voice, too measured and formal. Not to mention the fact that he knew their names. I'm inside, Wilson said.
Get out of here.
Sasha grabbed Caleb's hand and backed away, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. You must leave the island, Wilson said. I can help. Caleb didn't budge as Sasha tried to pull him out of the clearing. Do you have a better way home? Caleb asked.
God damn it.
Sasha followed reluctantly as Caleb walked up to the building. She took a deep breath and steeled her courage as he pushed open the door.
Chapter 3.
It took a few seconds for their eyes to adjust to the relative darkness of the small room. Welcome to Station 57, Wilson said. But the room was completely empty. I'm over here, he added. The computer in the corner. Caleb shook the mouse to wake up the screen, but wasn't surprised to find a sparse desktop. He could tell now that the odd sound of Wilson's voice was because he wasn't breathing.
Was that you, Wilson?
Caleb began to type his question, but Wilson interrupted. It's easier to use your voice. My speech recognition is very accurate and faster than typing. It also allows me to collect additional information from your tone and inflection. You're an AI? Sasha asked. Yes, I am Wilson 2.4, an artificial intelligence program created by Edward Warren. Would you like more information on my specifications?
Yes, please.
The screen was suddenly filled with text as dozens of README files opened on top of each other. They were all licenses for open source projects. Most of it was gibberish to them, but a machine learning package caught Caleb's eye. You're self-taught? He asked. Yes, Wilson responded. Outside of core functionality, I've been given the freedom to absorb information from a variety of sources and even modify my own architecture. Caleb had learned about this from his dad, but looked to Sasha to see if she was getting all of this.
Yeah, I got it.
Sasha didn't have the energy to get into a lengthy discussion with a computer program. You said you could get us off the island? Wilson paused slightly longer than a human would. Yes, you must leave before the eruption. Current estimates say it will begin in approximately 5 hours.
Eruption?
Eruption, they both exclaimed. The island is volcanic. Edward left 3 days ago to observe from a safe distance, while I monitor the equipment. That's why he created me. Sasha took a closer look at the room. Everything was labeled property of USGS.
Another way of the island. How do you know when it
How do you
happened?
know when it will happen? Sasha asked. My machine learning algorithm was trained by analyzing seismic data from hundreds of eruption events. With this type of volcano, there are distinct markers that occur in every case. The exact timing is impossible to predict, but the rate of acceleration is consistent with data 5 hours prior to many of the other eruptions.
Any other way of the island?
Is there another way off the island? Asked Caleb. The island is accessible by boat, Wilson replied. Yours is the only one. It is too badly damaged to reach the mainland, but it could carry you to a safe distance until help arrives. Your best chance of survival is for Sasha to fix the boat while Caleb repairs my satellite connection, which was damaged in the storm last night. Then I can send for someone to rescue you.
Why Sasha?
Why don't I go to the satellite? Sasha asked. Caleb has hypothermia, Wilson responded. The trip to the communications facility will be difficult, but physical activity will help increase his core temperature. Fixing the boat will require fine motor skills, which are affected by hypothermia.
Let's go.
Where's the satellite? Asked Caleb. About halfway up the mountain, replied Wilson. I can help you both, but you'll need to copy me to your phones. I've packaged myself into an app that is coming to you now. Their phones both dinged with the warning, Wilson 2.4 is from an unknown developer. Sasha immediately hit the trust button and Wilson's voice came from her tiny speaker. Hello, from
Why
Sasha's
you
phone.
kill
Are you there,
it?
Caleb?
Do not trust.
I need to save my battery to make contact once we get off the island, Caleb said. He still didn't trust Wilson, and his head was aching so badly he couldn't handle a chatty computer. My low power mode could operate for several hours on Edward's phone when he was working remotely, Wilson persisted.
Do not trust.
I don't have enough room, Caleb lied. Then delete some pictures, Sasha scolded. Wilson chimed in. I didn't want to scare you, but you should know that without my help, I have calculated that your odds of survival are just 3%. Even with my help, the odds are less than 50%. I'll head for the satellite, Caleb said as he turned to the door. But Sasha grabbed the phone out of his hands and hit the trust button.
God damn it.
Wilson's voice called out. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Installation confirmed.
God damn it.
Caleb looked at Sasha with astonishment, but she stood her ground. The hypothermia must be getting to your head. You're not thinking clearly. She handed the phone back to Caleb. Let's go.
God damn it. Bitch. I'm gonna be blue
Caleb
to
climbed to
the
the top of a rocky hill and held up his phone so Wilson could see out of the camera. The satellite is on that ridge, Wilson said, circling a point on the mountain about 3 miles inland. It was at least an hour hike on a straight trail, let alone through the thick underbrush. Head north, but stay alert. Why? Asked Caleb. Bears, Wilson replied. You have a strange sense of humor, Caleb said as he followed Wilson's directions. I will take that as a compliment. Humor is one of the most difficult things for an AI to do. I get the feeling you don't find me very entertaining, though.
I'm not a fan of the AI.
I'm not a fan of AI, said Caleb. Why not? My dad researches AI for a company in Silicon Valley. We don't get along very well. Wilson considered this, or perhaps Caleb's phone just wasn't powerful enough to run him smoothly. That doesn't seem logical, Wilson finally said. Why does your relationship with your father affect your opinion of me? Shouldn't you be in low power mode? Caleb asked. Okay, replied Wilson. Just keep going north. I'll check back in periodically.
Oh, so north.
By the time Sasha returned to the beach, the fog had dispersed, and the sun was finally starting to punch through the blanket of clouds. Sasha had dragged the boat far enough up the sand to see that the motor had been submerged overnight. But the real problem was the hull. It had several small cracks in the fiberglass where the boat had struck the rocks. It wasn't going anywhere without a lot of work.
Blast of Visco.
The boat had a small metal toolbox, but all that was inside was a hammer, a few screwdrivers, and a roll of duct tape that was almost empty. Sasha looked around the beach for anything that might be useful, but found nothing but rocks and pine trees.
Okay, fix the hull with pine tape.
Sasha ran into the woods and found a trunk that was covered in sap where a branch had broken off. It had turned into hard resin, but she was able to hammer off chunks and place them in the toolbox. It didn't take long to get the fire going again, and she placed the toolbox with the resin on top of the flames. A few miles inland, the intense hike had not only stopped Caleb from shivering, he was actually starting to sweat. Which way now? Caleb asked as he came to a rock outcropping that blocked his path forward. East, Wilson said. Caleb had gone no more than 10 steps when a howl suddenly filled the air. You said watch out for bears, Caleb hissed. We also have wolves, Wilson replied calmly.
Turn around.
Perfect, Caleb muttered as he turned around. You're going the wrong way, said Wilson. I'm going away from the wolves. If the wolves plan to eat you, then you are already surrounded. If that is the case, then higher ground is the best option. Caleb despised Wilson's cold, emotionless logic, but even more than that, he hated that Wilson was right.
Keep going.
If we get out of this alive, I'm going to delete you so fast, Caleb said as he slowly pushed onward. Once we fix the satellite, then you can do as you wish, Wilson replied. Caleb saw movement out of the corner of his eye and spun around. It was a mountain goat, who looked just as terrified as Caleb. For a brief moment, they studied each other, trying to guess which one the wolves were after.
Run.
The goat took off, and Caleb did the same, hurtling through the woods as fast as the thick underbrush would allow. After a few minutes, he came to a breathless stop and braced himself for an attack that never came. In the distance, he could hear the sounds of another chase. The wolves were going after the mountain goat. Caleb breathed a sigh of relief. Stay alert, Wilson reminded him. We also have bears on the island.
So I came from east and north. East, north,
Back at the
east.
boat, Sasha used a cloth to apply the hot pine sap to the hull and stood back to admire her handiwork. It was amazing how well this stuff worked. She had managed to repair all of the cracks, and the first few had already dried hard enough that she was confident it would hold. How long until Caleb gets back? Sasha asked Wilson. It is difficult to estimate, particularly in his condition. You need to focus on yourself. That is the best way to increase your odds of survival. Sasha knew he was right. She had tried to forget about it, but she had already given up on Caleb once when she stayed in the boat and let him drift away. Maybe it was the right call, but that didn't make the guilt any less real.
I should have gone after him.
I should have gone after him. He got washed overboard and I didn't even try to help. That was the right thing to do, Wilson said reassuringly. Sailors have a saying that the only thing worse than one person in the water is two people in the water. For some reason, that didn't make Sasha feel much better, so she turned her attention back to the task at hand.
Try to fix the motor.
Sasha tried to start the motor, but no matter how hard she tugged on the pull cord, it wouldn't turn over. She pulled off the plastic cover and saw that the inside was filled with sand and seaweed. Maybe if she cleaned it out, she could get it started. The seaweed came out easily, but But every time she disconnected something, sand and salt water poured out. She would have to take the whole thing apart to clean it. She was about to give up when an idea struck her. Wilson, can you take a picture every time I disconnect something? Of course, Wilson said as Sasha began the teardown. Caleb was exhausted by the time he reached the communication facility, a small metal shed surrounding the base of a massive satellite
Let's
dish
see
at
what
least 20
happened.
feet across. The top of the shed was littered with several smaller dishes, like he had seen on the cameras at the beach. At quick glance, there didn't seem to be any damage.
What's wrong with
What's
it?
wrong with it? Caleb asked. Difficult to say. We can run a diagnostics program inside.
Why are the small dishes?
What are all the little ones? Caleb asked. Wireless bridges, Wilson responded. That's how all of the cameras and seismometers tie into the network.
Go inside,
The
man.
door was unlocked. Inside were racks of equipment and a single workstation. Caleb found the diagnostics program.
This
Everything checked
time
out
I'm
okay,
gonna go to the
except for a
direct
single
east.
error. Uplink disconnected. There's the problem, Wilson said, indicating a single Ethernet cable that had unplugged from a switch. Just reconnect that to port 17.
That wasn't caused by a storm.
I thought you said it was damaged in the storm, Caleb said. I suppose one of the pre-eruption earthquakes could have shaken it loose, Wilson offered. Caleb took a closer look. The clip was intact. There was no way that came out on its own. However, the thing that made him suspicious was the strange red color. Caleb held it up to the light. It was covered in blood. Whose blood is that? Caleb demanded. That is irrelevant. Just plug the cable into port 17. Whose blood? Caleb shouted again. Edward's, Wilson replied coldly. Back at the boat, Sasha replaced the plastic cover of the motor. Here goes nothing, she muttered to herself, and grabbed the pull cord. This time, at least the cord moved, but no matter how hard she pulled, the motor refused to turn over. Sasha cursed herself for spending so much time fiddling with it. I think we should... Sasha's thought was interrupted by a sudden blast that knocked her off her feet and sent her tumbling across the ground. Her ears rang, and she could feel her heart racing. What was that? Before Wilson could respond, Sasha knew the answer. A massive cloud of smoke was rising from the mountain. The volcano was erupting.
Chapter 5.
Halfway up the mountain, Caleb was still trying to figure out why Edward had been bleeding when he unplugged the satellite. Before Caleb could finish the thought, the ground underneath his feet buckled, and the walls shook violently.
Open the
An
door.
earthquake? Caleb thought as he opened the door to find nothing but smoke. He could just barely see the plume of smoke shooting out of the top of the volcano before he began coughing and shut the door. The eruption has started, Wilson informed him. Reconnect the cable, and I will call for help while you evacuate.
What happened to Edward?
What happened to Edward? Demanded Caleb. Under the circumstances, Caleb was reluctant to do anything Wilson said. Edward evacuated to a nearby island, Wilson reiterated.
Why
Why was he bleeding? Caleb shouted. Edward encountered a bear, Wilson said. That's why I told you to stay alert. Caleb had no idea why, but if the bear part was true, he had the sneaking suspicion that Wilson had played a part. Please reconnect the cable, Wilson reiterated.
Did you hurt Edward?
The question seemed a bit ridiculous, but he asked anyways. Did you hurt Edward? No, Wilson replied. The bear did. But did you have anything to do with the bear? Insisted Caleb. A long pause. Yes. This is your last chance. Reconnect the cable so I can call for your rescue. Caleb grabbed a flashlight off the wall as he flung open the door and started racing west in the direction he had come from. This is illogical, Wilson protested. Don't make the same mistake that Edward did. The words sent a chill down Caleb's spine.
Go north.
But he kept running.
Go north.
You said 5 hours, Sasha screamed at Wilson. It hadn't even been 3 yet. Exact eruption times are impossible to predict, and I can't observe seismometer data from your phone. Wilson's neutral tone seemed out of place, considering how much adrenaline was coursing through Sasha's veins. You must evacuate now.
Wait for Caleb.
I'm not going anywhere without Caleb, Sasha said. She was terrified by the rising plume of ash, but wasn't about to abandon Caleb. The eruption is just beginning. If my models are accurate, the next major event will be a dome collapse and subsequent pyroclastic flow.
Is that bad?
Sasha had no idea what any of that meant. Imagine a cloud of gas nearly 2,000 degrees, traveling down the mountain at 500 miles an hour, Wilson said.
Sounds fun.
Oh, is that all? Wilson must have noted her tone. If you are not vaporized instantly, your brain will boil, causing your head to explode. I haven't even mentioned the dangers of spontaneous flooding, suffocation. That's enough, Sasha interrupted. But the boat isn't ready. Sasha was terrified, but secretly glad that she had an excuse not to leave without Caleb. She had no motor, and the tiny paddles would never get her past the surf. It was time to get creative.
Make a robot.
She remembered seeing a couple of brooms back in the building where they had met Wilson. Maybe she could use the handles as oars for a makeshift rowboat? Sasha grabbed her phone and raced for the complex. Caleb's legs ached from running down the mountain, but at least he was going downhill and had made it quickly out of the smoke. Caleb reached the rock outcropping and paused. He had been so preoccupied with the wolves that he didn't remember which way he had come from.
North.
Caleb forced his legs to keep moving,
What
but had
the
barely gone
hell?
20 feet when he pushed past a pine branch to find a huge grizzly bear blocking his path. Caleb froze, but it was already staring straight at Caleb and growling. I told you this was your last chance, Wilson warned. Sasha burst into the room and found the brooms. What are you doing back here? Wilson asked. Not from the phone, but from the computer. Sasha jumped. She had forgotten that there were multiple copies of Wilson. You must leave immediately. Internal pressure is falling and dome collapse is imminent. Sasha looked at the charts and graphs on Wilson's screen, but it was all gibberish. Where's Caleb? Sasha asked. Wilson didn't respond. Where is he? She demanded again. Caleb is dead.
Let's kill Caleb. Let's kill Caleb. How do you know?
How do you know that? She thought she heard herself ask, although she was too stunned to know for certain. He was killed by the eruption, Wilson said. The satellite is halfway up the mountain. Sasha was in disbelief, but Wilson continued. You must get back to the boat. If you don't leave now, then both of us will die. What do you mean, both of us? Sasha asked. Just because I'm a machine, do I not also have a right to live? Wilson had a sense of urgency in his voice that Sasha had never heard. With the satellite down, your phone is my only way off this island. Sasha didn't know if it was just the shock or something about Wilson's story that genuinely didn't make sense. You're lying, she said as she headed for the door. Somehow she knew that Caleb would be back, and when he did, she better have the boat ready. The grizzly snarled.
Let's see what happened.
He knew that the best defense against a bear was to play dead. However, the classic play dead scenario didn't factor in the possibility of imminent death by volcano, let alone the off chance that the bear might be controlled by a demented computer. Return to the satellite, Wilson threatened as the bear stood up on its hind legs.
Run away.
Caleb turned and ran. He didn't know which way he was going. He just went whichever way seemed to be the fastest escape from the grizzly. The bear tore limbs off trees as it raced after him. Caleb glanced back and instantly wished he hadn't. The bear was mere feet behind him. Running faster was easier said than done. The thick underbrush didn't slow the bear down, but it was impossible for Caleb not to be affected by it. The bear tackled him to the ground, and he howled in pain as all 1,200 pounds of the animal came down on his leg. Caleb's phone flew out of his hand, and the bear lunged after it, shattering it with his huge paw. Ever so faintly, Caleb felt a sudden clarity in his ears. He hadn't even noticed the high pitch that the phone had been emitting, like a dog whistle. But now that it was gone, he was certain that that's what had been driving the bear crazy.
Crawl away.
Caleb tried to crawl away as the bear rubbed the remnants of Caleb's phone out of his paws. Caleb's legs screamed with every movement, but he bit his lip until he was at least 100 feet away. Caleb tried to stand and instantly regretted it. His leg was definitely broken. He tried to get his bearings, but realized it didn't really matter. The cloud of ash now filled the sky in every direction but one. All he could do was limp toward the sliver of blue sky and hope for the best. Back at the boat, Sasha rowed a few times to test her makeshift oars. It wasn't pretty, but it would have to do the trick. "You must go now," Wilson insisted.
Launch the boat.
Sasha pushed the boat into the water and grabbed the oars. An image of Caleb in the water the night before flashed into her mind. She had already left him once to save her own skin. Could she really live with herself if she did it again?
Wait for Caleb.
Sasha floated for a moment. She was scared of dying, but even worse, she was terrified of having to carry that guilt around with her for the rest of her life. Sasha's thoughts were cut short by an enormous earthquake that shook the trees and caused the water beneath her
Fast
to
forward.
turn every step.
Oh
He thought
god.
about going inside the building and ripping Wilson's plug out of the wall, but he didn't want to waste a single step. The beach was through the trees, straight ahead. Just a few hundred yards and he'd be home free.
His legs is
The
fucked
earth
up.
beneath Caleb's feet began to shake, knocking him to the ground. The rumbling didn't stop. If anything, it became more intense. He couldn't stand up, so he crawled for the trees. The adrenaline was so intense he couldn't even feel his leg anymore. But he did notice that the clearing was bathed in an orange light that quickly grew brighter and brighter. It was the last thing he ever saw. Sasha waited exactly 3 minutes and 1 second before realizing that Caleb wasn't going to make it. Her makeshift oars creaked under the strain as she forced the boat out to sea. She was facing backwards as she rowed, so she saw every detail as the pyroclastic flow loomed over her like a fiery demon the size of a skyscraper. A few flashes of lightning pulsed around the cloud as it hit the water and shot out over the surface, vaporizing everything in its path. She was too close.
Jump.
Seconds before it hit, Sasha leaped out of the boat and dove as deep as she could. The water around her grew warm, and she heard a strange gurgling, which she realized was the sound of the water at the surface boiling. She stayed down as long as she possibly could, tossing against rocks as waves of pressure slammed into her. Sasha finally came up gasping for air and found only smoke and ash. She bumped against a rock and hauled herself onto it, realizing that it was the exact same sea stack that she had anchored the boat to the night before. This time the waves were calm and the boat was gone. Aside from the rock, the only thing that remained the same was the pit in her stomach, telling her that Caleb was gone. As the smoke cleared and the waves carried away the ash, she began to weep.
She started crying. Epilogue.
Sasha spent the next few hours on the rock, but the eruption might as well have been a giant signal flare. The waters around the island were soon filled with boats of onlookers snapping pictures, and even a cruise ship that took a detour to see the volcano, which was still spewing smoke. The boats all kept a safe distance, but soon an adventurous fisherman finally came close enough for Sasha to flag him down. "Looks like you had a rough day," the man said as he hauled her aboard. "What happened?" Sasha was still shaking, but she told him everything. Wilson, the volcano, the storm that stranded them. Caleb. She choked up when she mentioned his name. "That's some story," the fisherman said, clearly not believing her. Even she had to admit, it sounded crazy. The fisherman handed Sasha his phone. "Looks like your volcano made the front page."
I couldn't throw the phone because I don't have a killer. Take the phone.
The front page of the local news site featured the headline, "Volcano shuts down air travel across Alaska." But the thing that caught Sasha's eye was the signal bar at the top of the screen. It was connected. Sasha pulled out her own phone and was surprised to find it was still working. She had no idea how long it had been connected, but there were hundreds of text messages in her inbox. The phone rang a few times before Sasha's mom picked up. "Hey, honey, how's the cabin?" As Sasha talked to her mom, a server at a data center in Salt Lake City was shuffling gigabytes of data around when it was contacted by a cell phone in Alaska. The server did what it always did, transferred the data, and added the entry to its activity log. Wilson.exe. Transfer successful.
What happened next? What happened next, man? Did they die? What happened? They're gonna show us, I guess. Ah, so I was trying to be Dick here to see what's really happening. Merge virtual reality. Mighty coconut. Continue. Well, that's it. Caleb died. That's all. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you guys think of this gameplay. I'm gonna catch you guys inshallah next time when we meet again. Bye bye, take care, love you all. Allah Hafiz, Allah Pakistan Zindabad. Peace.